This is the John Michael Show.
Hey everybody, I'm John Michael, and I want to thank everybody for coming over to the John Michael Show, the new channel on my YouTube. Now, my first guest on this show, the first series of shows I'm going to do here, is on a man by the name of Bob Sparks. He's 88 years old. He's lived a hell of a life, and he has some serious stories. Bear with it. Pay attention to what he says, because this is a hell of a journey this guy's been on. This is going to be a 4-part series, so I'm going to label it as chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's incredible. So he starts off as a singer down in Virginia and winds up being in the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union fell. And there was a lot of mobster stuff in between his lifetime, between, his early days of being down in D.C. and then finally winding up in the Soviet Union when the curtain fell. And then it's a very interesting story. He has some serious details on things that most people shouldn't know, and it's very interesting. So please welcome to the show, and my first ever John Michael Show, Mr. Bob Sparks. Hey everybody, I'm John Michael, and this is John Michael Presents, and with me tonight is Mr. Bob Sparks. He circled the sun 88 times, and he's got a lot that he's done in his 88 times. So Mr. Sparks, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. It's good to be here. I've been looking forward to doing a show with you, because you've got a new thing going, and I've been knowing you for a long time.
Right. 28 years we've known each other, and I've never realized how much you did with your life. I mean, we sat down and we've had coffee like this before, and we talked a little bit, but you said something to me the other day in conversation, and I said, you know what? This is a whole new level of excitement for me, because Mr. Sparks was a singer.
Yep.
And you started singing at the age of
4.5.
4.5 years old. Now, how did that happen?
Well, my grandfather, I lived with my grandfather, with my mother's father.
Uh-huh. And
my father was killed in a plane crash.
Oh.
Now, one morning about 4:30, morning at 4:30, my uncle came home with several other drunks.
Oh, boy.
Boys and girls, and they'd been out all night to a party. They came back, and my uncle knew that I sang. He came upstairs, and I remember him carrying me down the steps. And he planted me in the floor, middle of the floor in the living room with a bunch of people, and he said, "Sing." And I
just
said,
woke
"No."
up.
Yeah. I said, "I'm not going to sing." He says, "I'll play the guitar for you like we normally do." And I said, I'm not going to sing." He said, well, how about if we pay you? So they took up collection, and I think it was 86 cents in coins.
Okay.
I sang.
At 4.5 years old, you're earning,
yep,
right?
First thing. And I sang really for the rest of my life until I was until a lot of years later.
So you've experienced a lot. Now, you're from Virginia originally.
Yes, a little town called Martinsville.
Martinsville, okay.
Yeah, it's down near North Carolina, about 35 miles from the Winston-Salem area and that.
Right.
And that's where I was born. Then I lived with my grandfather, which was about 10 miles north of that town. And he had a farm, and I didn't ever want to leave that farm, because he had horses and dogs and cats and acres to run around, and I knew every rock where an Indian or a bear could be hiding. When I went out of the house, I was ready. So that's it. And then I started to a school, a one-room country school. It had a pot-bellied stove in the middle of the room, and it was for the first 6 grades, and there were a total of 18 children in the school.
With one teacher.
One teacher.
One teacher.
So they taught, whatever classes. I don't remember the way she did it, but I know one thing. At the first grade, I knew what the second grade had to do, and I learned it.
Right, because you were hearing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we were just in a room,
Just a room.
20 by 20 or something.
Correct.
It wasn't big at all.
Right.
And so they'd do the 6th grades, and so at midterm, they put me in the 2nd grade. At the end of the year, I passed into the 3rd grade.
Okay.
And then the next year at midterm, they wanted to put me in the 4th grade, but the superintendent of schools of the county wouldn't let them do it.
Because you've already jumped a little bit.
Yeah, because
So you were excelling every year.
yeah, that's right. Because I knew everything. I'd heard everything that the 2nd graders had been taught.
Right, right.
And then when I was in the 3rd grade, I heard everything that the 4th, 5th, and 6th were being.
Right,
So
right.
I had really I was well indoctrinated.
Yeah, I mean, you hear it enough times, you already know it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
and kids
awesome.
and kids remember everything anyhow.
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Children are like, their minds are like sponges at
Yeah,
that age.
yeah.
So what? So you started singing at 4.5. What were you singing at 4.5 years old?
I don't even remember what I was saying, but it would be country western because that's all they listened to down
Right,
there.
down that far.
Some of the famous old singers, and I did that. But then as I got higher in school, like in high school, I started learning all the pop songs.
Okay.
You know.
So now in 1950-ish, 48, 50-ish is where your high school years were.
I finished in 51.
Right. So what would have been those pop songs?
Oh my
can you
goodness!
recall?
I knew you were going to ask me something like that. I can't even think.
Because I think this is just before Elvis came through. No?
It was a bit, it was a bit before, but I cannot write at this moment. You
Okay.
just asked me,
Okay.
and I
Well,
hadn't
wait.
thought
If it comes to you, let me know.
I will.
So then you sang through high school,
Yes,
and then at some point you became a professional singer.
yes. My high school, the first year for that high school was 1951. It was the Franklin County High School in Virginia.
Right.
We didn't have we only had classrooms. We didn't have any place to eat. Everybody brought the food in a brown paper bag.
Right. Right.
And but they had speakers in every room. The new school, and that was the first thing they had. And there were 300 and some of us there in the school. And I would take a ukulele and sit in the principal's office by the speaker and play songs for all the kids.
Oh, through the PA system.
Yeah, but
oh,
lunchtime,
Okay.
at lunchtime.
Right. Okay.
And so that was a little training for me, you know.
Yeah.
And then after I got out of high school, I went to Washington, D.C., where I had an aunt and an uncle. And they just sort of took care of me. I got my own apartment, and I started doing USO shows.
Okay. Yeah. For the soldiers.
There must be 35 different little military or big military places in the Washington, D.C. area.
Right.
And I was very flattered. I did so many shows, and I started, instead of just being a singer, I started being the MC also.
Okay.
Okay? And in fact, who's the president? Eleanor Roosevelt.
Yes.
I did so many USO shows that she had a card printed thanking me for doing USO, and she signed it.
Nice.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I was so thrilled. It made my mother happy. And
So did you ever meet Roosevelt?
yes, I met her. Yes,
And what about the husband, the president?
I didn't meet him. He had died, hadn't he? He died at the end of the Second War. I
don't remember.
Yeah. Well,
Wasn't there. Sorry.
Anyhow, after that incident, I went into professionally.
Okay.
An agent for one of the people who were doing a show came to me and said, "Where are you working?" I said, "I'm not. I'm just doing this." And he said, "Well, how would you like to work a little place here in town called the Wayne Room?" I still remember it well because the first person I worked with was Don Rickles.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And he
And
insulted
this is in
me.
D.C.
What?
This is in Washington D.C. or New York?
That was in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
I hadn't gone to New York yet.
Okay.
But he, see, I couldn't even be in the same room because liquor was sold. So the way
Oh,
I
you were
did
that
it,
young yet?
Yeah,
Sure.
17.
You were only 17 years old.
Yeah, so what I would open the show with a couple of 3 songs, and then I would introduce a girl dancer, a tap dancer or something, and then I would introduce Don Glasshead Rickles. He
Don
was
Glasshead?
yes, that's the way he was advertised in the paper and everything. He did one of the greatest routines I have ever seen in my whole life. It was about a man who was arrested for a crime which he didn't do, and the police had been at him so long with the bright lights and keeping him awake, he felt they could see inside his head. And I've heard grown men in the audience say, "Okay, knock it off, that's enough."
Because the interrogations were rough.
No, it wasn't that. They got so emotionally involved with this man
Oh, okay.
what he was going through, and I've heard women scream. I mean, like a dozen women.
Wow.
I mean, it was spectacular.
His show was that.
He was that good.
Well, okay. Yeah.
That one routine. Now, he did all kinds of things, but he had just started his heckling bit, his insulting bit.
Oh, right.
About 2 weeks before. He went from Don Glasshead Rickles. He became the insulting sultan.
That's funny.
Yeah, and then that was and he even insulted me on my opening night. And when he said, I won't go into, but I said, "Well, this is professional show business. I'm out of it." That was I didn't want to be around people like. Anyhow, it wasn't anything dirty, but it was.
It was an insult.
Yeah,
And at that time, it wasn't accepted yet.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I started getting shows elsewhere, and then I moved to New York, and then it got very interesting. You know, then I started working. I started working in the Poconos. I started working down in Atlantic City, along that area. It was a fine time. A lot of things happened, and I've been very lucky to have been in a certain place at a certain time, the proper time,
Right.
my whole career. And I was busy all the time.
So were you seeking to be a singer?
Yes.
Yeah, that
I
was
loved it. Yeah,
Okay.
I loved it.
Because you're saying you were at the right place at the right time, there's a lot of people a lot of musicians who this is what they really want to do, but they can never get a break. And I've spoken with a lot of musicians, and they say it's really not about your, who you know. It's the timing
Well, you know,
of where you are.
there is that, of course, but you don't give up.
Right.
I guess I'm stubborn.
Well, it's good to be stubborn.
Yeah, well, I kept on with it. Even though I wasn't doing anything, I always had someone who would help back me up and keep me eating and having a place to sleep, my relatives. And so I finally got to the point where I was making my own way quite well.
Nice.
Yeah, it was
Nice.
It was very well. I just don't give up. That's even today. My wife, at my age, says, "Why don't you take a break?" Then my neighbors say, I don't take breaks.
Yeah.
I pace myself. I just work a little easier, but I don't stop working.
Right.
I'm talking about whether I'm mowing the lawn or whatever.
Right.
It worked that way.
So then you went into the Army in 1957.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, was that a draft or was that
Yeah.
a conscious choice?
Yeah, I always make the joke about that. I answered the call to arms with the help of 3 MPs, but it's not true. But no, I was drafted. Everyone was going in those days. I still feel that every young man and every young woman should spend 2 years in the military. To this day, I mean, I'm not a fanatic about it. But I just see that the young people know so little about so many important things. Things that if you're if you must do something, you must do it. And I think that's why I call myself stubborn. My mother had one of the funniest sayings I've ever heard. I still think of it every day, just about. When I would do something stupid, and it came easy to me to do something stupid, my mother had your people watching your show will use this, I'm sure. She would say, "There's an awful lot of jackass on your father's side of the family."
Jesus.
Yes. I love
Yeah, because
that.
then definitely it wasn't on her side.
No, but it was so funny.
That
and
is
it still
funny.
is today.
And that was a nice way of saying that was a dumb move.
Yeah. Well, and I just don't give up.
Right.
You know, I'm 88 years old now.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
I mean, you
I'm-
really are incredible.
Well, I'm still going. I'm still flying balloons and doing.
Well, we didn't get there yet.
I know.
We didn't tell them that yet.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah,
if
we
you
didn't
want.
get there. We're still talking about your music career.
Oh yeah. Well, from there I went to New York.
So you came out of the Army in 1959.
That's correct.
Now, will you come back out and start singing again?
I was singing in the Army. I was the soloist in the 4th Army Soldiers Chorus, and I loved that. I did some television with them, for them. And then when I got out, it seemed like everything just fell into place. And I stayed with it professionally and did well with it. But then I had learned to talk a little bit. And so people would always have me MC the shows.
Okay.
And I wasn't afraid of people. I liked them. I thought, geez, I can't have an audience if they're not out there.
Right.
So I didn't get scared or anything. I was a little nervous in the very beginning, the first time I did the USO shows, because there's nothing out there but men mostly. You might have 10 or 12 women out of 300 people.
Rough crowds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were always nice. They were always nice. That's why I send money to the USO every year.
Nice.
When I get they send a thing in the mail,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
send them a check.
So, while you were in New York, you met a bunch of people.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Do you want to talk about who some of the people you rubbed elbows with, or
some of them? Well, happy to. Some of them were good friends of mine. For example, I actually did a show with Jimmy Durante. Now, he was near the end of his career, but he was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood and every other place for a while, before your time. I did a show with him. I worked with, particularly, I liked Mel Torme. He was a singer. He was a good friend of mine. Then along came, can't think of the name, Ben Stiller.
Ben Stiller? Okay,
Yeah,
that's a name.
his father and mother. It was Stilla and Mira, and they were a team, and they lived in New York. They lived on 72nd Street on the west side, and I lived on 72nd Street up near the Dakota, up at the east side.
Okay.
And I used to go down when they wanted to go see the agents in New York. I would go down and babysit with Ben Stiller with my 2 daughters.
Oh, okay. So by this time you're a full grown man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you're married with children?
Yeah, I had
Okay.
2,
Okay.
and they're delightful and smart, and they live down south. They I talk to them every week.
Nice.
We talk every week. But
So you and your 2 daughters.
they would stay with Ben. They would stay with and play with each other. They were the same
Right.
age.
Now this
about.
is the Ben Stiller, the actor.
Yeah.
he's now a very famous
He's a
actor.
star, like his
Yeah.
folks were. But then when they came back from making the rounds of the agents, then they would take care of my 2 kids, my 2 daughters, until I made the rounds and come back, and I'd pick them up and we'd go home. And we did that often.
Oh, that was a sweet deal.
Yeah. And then when I started booking shows for like Tamament in the Poconos and Mount Airy Lodge and places like that, when I did shows like that, and I just lost my thought, you're going to have to.
And hey, you know what, guys? We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Outmow your neighbors with Division 3 Robotics and the Husqvarna Automower. Take back your weekends and automate your yard work with the world's leader in robotic lawn mowing. Built with safety in mind, high-strength carbon steel blades provides a picture-perfect lawn. The Husqvarna robotic lawnmower works quietly and effortlessly, rain or shine, day or night. Hey Google, ask Automower to cut the grass. Division 3 Robotics offers professional installation and support of Husqvarna Automowers. Our mission is to provide a complete, more efficient, eco-friendly solution for lawn care and maintenance. Outmow your neighbors with Division 3 Robotics and the new Husqvarna Robotic Lawnmower. Visit division3robotics.com today or give us a call to schedule your free demonstration.
Hey, everybody, I'm John Michael, and this is Bobby Sparks, and we are back. And I want to thank our sponsors for that little bit there. Now, Bobby, we were talking about the Poconos.
Yes. Honeymoon heaven. And a lot of things where I worked at two places, Mount Airy Lodge. I knew John and Suzanne Martens, who started it. Mm-hmm. They were good friends of mine. And I worked Tamament in the Poconos. Tamament was a bigger place. They could hold like 1,000 people sometimes.
Wow.
But the one time that I liked so much was we were doing a show, and I'm still trying to think of the name. He was married to half the people in Billy. You're going to have to go back and click
Okay, we'll
this.
go back. We'll circle around to that.
Okay, all right. I can't think of his name. Sorry.
That's okay.
Anyhow, so I was working in the Poconos, and then I started getting jobs like down in Atlantic City and stuff like that a lot.
Right.
Then a comedian named Charlotte Fay from Miami worked with me somewhere, and she said, I know somebody who would love to have you in their club. And I went to in Greenwich Village, and I went there, and I went for 2 weeks. They asked me if I could play a guitar.
Oh.
Because it was folk music. You know, everybody wanted folk singers back in the 70s or whatever this was. 60s, I guess, even before 60s. They said, can you play a guitar? I went there and auditioned. I sang a few songs. He thought that was nifty. Can you play a guitar? Yes, of course. They said, well, the crowd would love it if you could play guitar. So I went and bought a guitar and learned 2 songs on
What,
it.
in overnight?
No, it took me about 2 weeks to learn it. Yeah.
I've been trying for 15 years.
Yeah, but I didn't play it well. I just strummed it, you know.
Right.
And it worked well. I stayed there. I stayed in that club for 27 months. And
Wow.
I ended up, I owned a piece of it at the end, and halfway through, I got a piece of it, and then I sold it when I left.
Nice.
Yeah. But it was wonderful. I got to meet so many people. You know, the Mel Torme was a good friend of mine. I liked him. We liked to sit around and chat. You know, we were sort of an age. You know, he's a bit older than I, but I just met so many nice people. New York was wonderful. Then I started going all over. I started doing some USO shows in Europe. And that got to be interesting because I was doing that paid well. And I did some shows in Africa and I went all over Europe.
Well, so now we're talking late 60s?
Yeah, it would be, yeah.
Mid to late 60s?
Yeah.
So the Vietnam War was going on, and
Yeah, all kinds of stuff.
Nixon was being Watergated, and
Yeah. I did a show in Washington D.C. at the Congressional Women's Club on 16th Street, and it was the wives and so on of senators and daughters and all. And I did a show. It was all women. It went well, and I was very pleased. And Pat Nixon was there, the president's wife,
Right.
and I didn't know it. She didn't make herself known, but she called me later, and she wouldn't let my agent call me. She wanted to call me and chat with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, my agent was going crazy because he didn't want to give her my number, but he had to.
Right.
But
by order of the.
yeah. Anyhow, so she would have me in those days. If you had a big swanky party, you would
Right,
have
right.
what they called a society band, and they would have a girl singer usually.
Right.
But she would call them and ask them to please hire me, and she would pay for me along with the girl. So we
nice.
could both, when people are dancing, you just sing a pop song and so on. And that went well, and I never would take any pay for it. All I ever did was say, "Can I'd like to have a picture with your photo."
Right,
and
right.
she would say, "Right, would you like Richard in it also?" And yeah, it would make my mother happier.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. That's all I ever got was photos of her. And,
So you never really met her personally then?
yeah, oh yeah,
you did?
Yeah, oh
Did you
yeah,
meet
oh
Richard
yeah.
personally?
And we always chatted. I think I did 3 shows for her after that before I
nice.
left. This was before I went to New York. I
Now, was
think.
this in the White House?
No. It would be at a private.
A private estate.
It'd be a room in a hotel.
Oh, okay.
Because when they had a
Banquet
party,
hall.
they'd have a big one.
Right,
you know.
right.
And so I just met a lot of wonderful, wonderful people.
It sounds like you've had. I mean, that there is just exciting.
Yeah, with that.
But
I was
at the time when this was all going on in your life, did you realize? Did you know this was special?
well. It was special to me, but I didn't. And it wasn't something that really helped my career. I mean, it wasn't so other than my agent could say, "Hey, like
Right,
agents,
right,
they could say, hey, the president's wife had him over,"
Right.
So everything, one thing led to something else.
Right.
I was at the right place at the right time, but the Lord put me there is the only way I can explain it.
Right.
I met so many people that way. I simply didn't know what was going on. I met people like Pat Boone, Phyllis Diller, these Milton
Diller?
Berle. Yeah.
Really? Now, she was quite the comedian.
She was a what?
Comedian?
Yeah, a comedian,
Yeah,
but
little funny.
but what kind? Yeah, but she was a bit
was
wacky.
dirty.
She was a bit wacky too.
Yeah,
she
right.
was hard to deal with. I booked her.
Even as a person?
Yeah, I booked.
Oh,
well,
because I didn't know if that was an act like
no,
you seen.
I booked her on I booked her at Tamament in the Poconos. It's closed now.
Right, right.
But years ago, but I booked her, and she nearly drove me crazy. Like when she had a suite,
Right.
but had 2 doors.
Uh-huh.
And she had to go in one door and all the way around and lock each door behind her as she went to be sure there was nobody in the room. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And then Pat Boone didn't show up for a show. We were supposed to do a show at 10:30 at night, and he stopped to eat, and he didn't show up. We finally got the show on at a little bit after 1 o'clock.
In the morning.
Yeah. So 10:30, 11:30, about 3 hours late, and I begged him to come on. I said, I'll get the chef to have a great dinner for you when you get here. You're only an hour away.
Right. So where was he coming from?
I don't know. They'd been at a show that it was a bus.
The whole bus.
Everybody was on the bus, and he didn't. But out of the 900 and some checks that they had that night in the nightclub for whiskey and all, they only collected like 135 checks.
Everybody else walked out
Everybody walked out. Yeah,
and didn't pay for their drinks. and
didn't
stuff.
pay.
Well,
So that's how entertainers can cause bad names for
and that
entertainers.
could ruin you as a producer.
Yeah.
And a promoter.
Yeah, well, it was just the way I knew the owners, so they always knew what the scoop was. We worked
Right.
together.
But I mean, like when the people, the clientele.
Oh yeah, but that I didn't book them in the hotel. They were in the hotel. There would be outsiders also, but I didn't run the hotel. I just did the shows.
Right. Like, I'm sure you're aware, I know you're aware, that I became a promoter and producer of shows.
Yes.
Accidentally.
Yes, but I think that's wonderful.
It's not easy.
No.
And I can't imagine how difficult it was then with the communication issue. I mean, at least now we could send an email, we could pick up a cell phone.
Well, my thing. So normally, if you book someone you know, like in my case, if I'm working for a hotel, I'm part of the entertainment at the hotel.
Right.
But I could book the acts, and if the acts were not good, the owners I always got asked them, is this okay, this person, so on. Yes. Do you think the crowd we've got next week, do you think the young people, I tried to really make it work.
Yeah.
And over 99% of the time, it did work.
Mm-hmm.
But you would once in a while get some clinkers.
Yeah, and that's my big fear. And not my big fear. It's not that I have a bad act,
Yeah.
but like you said, what if the act doesn't make it?
Yeah.
What if something happens?
That's
Everybody's in
the
there
worst.
waiting, and it's a
Yep.
great show. Mm-hmm. I mean, it would be a great show.
Yeah.
But what if they don't make it? What if flat tire, car accident, stuck in traffic? What do you do as a promoter? You've taken all their money. You've sold all the tickets.
Well, that was the hotel. The hotel, they didn't sell tickets because if you came, you just
Right.
came.
It was an open event.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
As a guest of the hotel.
But the people walking out without paying, that's
without
bad.
paying their bills. Now
Yeah.
that was that,
And the hotels, and a couple of times that this happened, but the owners always understood. Well, the entertainer did it, not you, and we won't have him back again.
right. So like in some of the contracts that I signed, well, most of them, there is a clause in there. If you don't perform the show, you lose and you owe. There's a certain dollar amount you're going to owe me.
Well, what I had when I was an entertainer, just a singer in the beginning, we had a play or pay contract. If you didn't play the job, you had to pay the agent the amount of money that you were to get.
Exactly.
Pay or play.
Right.
Play
So
or pay.
that's something I have in my contracts. Is
Yeah.
Because so they want the artists today want a guarantee.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm coming there, I want to guarantee you this much money, and blah blah. Well, it works both ways. If you don't show up,
Mm-hmm.
or let's just say you don't show up, I guarantee of what I'm going to lose because you didn't show up.
Yeah. Yep.
And that really, they're like, hey, hold on, we don't need to go that, I'd go crazy.
Yeah.
Well, what's fair is fair,
Well, that's like
because there's a lot of work that goes into putting on a show.
Well, that's sort of like, having to pay for a meal that you didn't get. That's
Right.
all it is. It's that simple.
Right.
But I don't like it. People have always been pretty good to me. I've never been I'm not saying that I don't use some crazy lines or joke about things, but I'm not what I call a wise guy or a smart aleck.
Right.
I'm not. If I do something wrong, I'm going to be the saddest person in town about it.
Right. And that's how I want to be, because I'm just as attached to the thing as everybody
Yeah.
else.
It's
Because
yours.
It's your name. It's your reputation.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Wow. So at some point, you started flying hot air balloons.
Yeah, oh yeah, wonderful. That was a long time ago. I was standing on stage with a delightful girl singer. I've loved her from when she was just a teenager. Her name's Brenda Lee. She had a voice like a 25-year-old woman when she was like 14 years old or something. She sounded like an adult. And she could sing. I loved her. And I was in high school. And I'm sure I was in high school. But anyhow, Brenda Lee and I were standing on stage at a county fair somewhere. Or maybe it was a state fair. I used to love
An
fairs.
outdoor event.
Yeah.
With a racetrack or
Yeah,
something.
has a racetrack. And across the racetrack is the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And then the stage is on this side of the racetrack. It's sort of hard to develop an intimacy.
Right, when you're 300 feet away.
Yeah, right. But we were standing there one evening, and I noticed she was on my right, and she kept looking up over my head, and I thought, well, there must be a bug flying around. You know, sometimes a bug
Right,
will fly from the heat. Well, she kept looking up, and then I was yakking away with her, and then I heard somebody say, "Hello, Earthling," and I looked up just to my left, and there was a hot air balloon, the first one I ever saw,
Flying over the stage.
right between me and the audience. Yeah,
Wow.
it was probably 50 or 60 feet over my head.
Oh, Jesus.
The wind, it just happened. He took off to blow in order to blow in front of the people and the crowd, because anybody else out in the thing would see him anyhow.
Right.
But he had a stacked audience there, and he had a banner on it, and I still don't know what the banner said because it was facing the crowd.
Oh, wow. So he even was able to turn it the right way.
And then I went looking for a balloon, and I got one. But I went to California. I couldn't find them. Nobody wasn't listed in the yellow pages. There were only. I heard an old-time balloonist that I met when I first started. There were 14 balloons in the United States at the time. So I got started young. So there were 14 balloons, and I went to California. I couldn't find them. I couldn't find anything. Nobody knew anything about them. The modern-day hot air balloon was invented back in the early 60s, or maybe 61, 63. And I took my first balloon ride when I was I think it was 66. And I heard about a year ago, one of the old-time balloonists said that at that year there were 14 balloons in the United States.
Wow. So it was very new technology then.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't new, but it was like being revised.
Well, yeah, because the first hot air balloon ever flown was a hot air balloon, and with two people that flew in Paris. They flew for about 25 minutes, went about 7 miles. It was November 21st, 1783.
Wow.
Keep that in mind. November 21st, 1783. December 17th, I think it was, 1903, the first airplane flew. So we had balloons and blimps
Right.
120 years before we had an airplane.
That's crazy if you think about it.
Yeah. But we could have flown during the time of Christ. We had fabric and we had fire. Nobody ever put it together.
Not that we know of.
What?
Not that we know of.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, so then, but I think that like the next day, they flew a hydrogen balloon, or just within a day or two, they flew a gas balloon. Not the same two people.
Right.
But a man flew it. It was two of them, and when they landed, the one guy jumped out. And the pilot went back up.
Right, he took the weight out of the basket.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. So he said he was the first person ever to see two sunsets in one day. He came down, he missed it, and then he went back up and saw it again. So that went on. That was a part of the time.
Oh, that's great. Hey, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to be right back with Mr. Bob Sparks.